First of all, thank you guys all for participating today. Really appreciate it. This is the first executive roundtable that we've had in a while, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. We are going to record this, so if you want to take notes, you can. If you want to just refer to the recording at the end of the process, that'll be available to you guys. Today, we're going to hear from Brian Jepson about the really successful AI implementation. And the reason that Brian is featured today is I've had so many requests for trying to get us trying to hear from a successful case study, as opposed to all the hype that we've heard and all the articles that are telling us about the failed AI implementations. I wanted to really take an opportunity to give us an opportunity to talk about a very, very successful implementation of AI. And I think you're going to really enjoy Brian's story. Brian's the director of contact centers for Farida Entertainment, which includes Landry's Restaurants, Golden Nugget Hotels and Casinos, and the Houston Rockets. Kind of a nice variety of organizations. Brian is also a new member of CCNG, and he's also on the board of the Contact Center AI Association, and he can tell you about that a little bit later. And he's the recent recipient of 2 Frost and Sullivan Awards for innovation and deployment of AI in the contact center space. So I'm excited to have Brian share his story today. As this is a roundtable format, I'm also encouraging everybody to participate. We want to hear your comments, your experiences, your questions. So the more that we can make this an interactive event, the more value it is for everybody. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Brian. Brian?
Thank you, Lon. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate being a member. I've sat in on a few of these. Lon and I spoke. I just want this to be very informal. I don't have slides I share with you. I just want to share my story. And I think hopefully you can relate, and hopefully it spurs some excitement in your journeys along the way. I've been in the contact center industry for over 30 years, started out as an agent, I've managed sites of 700, 800 agents. I've been a VP of operations in the BPO space, having multiple sites and responsibilities. I've been at Landry's now for 10 years. They hired me to come in and build a call center for them to handle the Golden Nugget reservations. I'm pretty sure if I ask anybody what's the biggest challenges that you see in the contact centers, you're all contact center leaders. For me, one of the biggest challenges has always been staffing, right? How do you control your attrition? How do you manage staffing? How do you hire people, especially in you're running a 700-seat site in a town of 8,000 people, and you have 100+% attrition a year. You know, how do you manage that kind of staffing? And so that's always been a challenge here also, but never really expressed quite the impact as it did during COVID. So being in the hospitality industry, you're probably familiar with a lot of our brands. Landry's Restaurants, we have over 600 restaurants, everything from Bubba Gump's, Joe's Crab Shack, up to Morton's, Mastro's, The Palm, Del Frisco. So, and then of course the Golden Nugget Hotels and Casinos. Well, during COVID, of course, the government shut all of us down. Our casinos and hotels were closed for 6 to 8 weeks. And during that time, one of my properties, and we took the PBX calls. So that's the internal calls, people calling in saying, transfer to the restaurant, transfer to housekeeping, what time is check-in, is the pool open, those types of very simple calls. It's about 40,000 calls a month that they were taking. And we decided when we opened back up again, we were going to take those calls and put them in my call center in Houston. And I said, no problem, we'll just hire the staff to be able to handle those additional calls. So we opened back up again, and all of a sudden volume went crazy. Everybody couldn't get back to the real life soon enough, and volumes went crazy. I'm all of a sudden now got 40,000 more calls, and I realized not everybody wanted to come back to work, and not everybody wanted to work at all. I mean, it was a very challenging time, and so during that period, I was abandoning about 40 to 50% of my call volume, and it was a huge struggle uh, just to answer. Most of those were reservation calls. So when you start looking at the impact of reservations, um, I went to my CFO and I said, "Hey, I can't throw bodies at this anymore. There's just not bodies out there. How do we handle this? The impact of this is, if I'm taking, just to make it simple, if I handle a million calls a year at 40% abandon, that's 400,000 calls, and at 40% conversion rate, that's 160,000 reservations I'm missing out on. And at 2 nights per stay and $100 a night, that's about $30+ million in a year in revenue that I'm missing out on, potentially missing out on. And so when he realized that, he says, "Okay, we got to do something different." And I said, "What do you want?" He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, let's try this AI stuff. This was 3.5 years ago. Now let's try this AI stuff. Let's see what's working. He says, "Fine." And so I started the process of looking around and at what's out there. I've kind of dabbled into it a little bit. Um, Number one, I wanted to make sure we had a good experience. I didn't want everybody. I'm sure you've all had bad experiences listening, getting on a virtual assistant that goes. You can't say agent fast enough. Try to get an agent, right? And so I didn't want that type of experience. I didn't want it robotic. I wanted it to be very conversational. And how do we do it? But it was very simple calls, right? These were, again, what time is check-in? Is the pool open? Transfer me to the restaurants. Very simple calls. And so I did a search at that point. We looked around at different vendors. It was interesting that the majority of the vendors 3.5 years ago, technology has changed quite a bit over the last few years in this space, but 3.5 years ago, pretty much everybody used the same AWS voice as a robotic. I said, that's just not the experience I wanted. And so I came across a partner who presented they could do our restaurant reservations, our restaurant to go orders. And the partner was Poly AI, and they're based in the UK. And so they did a restaurant to go order demo for me, and they used a nice British female voice, which is very nice. Of course, they're in the UK for my Saltgrass Steakhouse. And I said, "Well, that sounds very nice, but can you do something a little more Texan?" So they came back the next day. I said, "Sure." Next day, they came back with the one, and this time it answered the phone and it said, "Howdy, thank you for calling Saltgrass Steakhouse." Like, okay, that's a little extreme, but it made me realize, okay, these guys get it, right? It's the voice, it's the conversation. How are my customers going to relate to this? And so I said, "Here's 10 calls of my best agent. Can you make it sound like my best agent?" So they came back with a voice that sounded just like my best agent. They use live voice. And one of the challenges, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, as far as it has to be scripted, right? I give them a script, but these are a script that I gave my agent. So I gave them a script that says, record this script, all these different scripts, 20 different FAQs. Actually, we started out with 10 FAQs. And then here's my directory of all my extensions. They call and ask this person transfer it into these extensions. So we said that's who we went with. It took about 4 weeks. This was very, very quick implementation. We were the first deployment in the US, so they were very focused on getting us up and going. But 4 weeks to deploy, and I was hoping for about 40 to 50% of those calls being contained. And day one, it handled 87% of those calls. And I'm like, hallelujah, right? So what that ended up doing is it took all those calls off of the agent that they really didn't need to speak to somebody. These were people that were waiting 45 minutes just to say, transfer me to the restaurant. It was a horrible, horrible experience. So from that point, my abandons dropped to under 10%. I was now capturing the revenue that I was missing out on, and being able to drive a much better experience for my customers. And I think that's the key here. People, that are looking to deploy this technology, don't do it because you just want AI. Do it because you want to give a better experience to your customers. And that was what the whole intent here was. is how do we give better experience? What are my pain points for my customers? Where do they have problems getting a hold of me? How do I make it easier for them to do business with us? So that's how we started out, and we started going along. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. As we learned, because now we're collecting data, we're collecting intents. We're understanding what people are calling about. Initially, we started with 10 FAQs. We started to learn that a lot of people were asking. Now I knew exactly what they were asking about. We identified about 10 other questions that it could answer. And so we put those in too. So then now it's capturing more and more. So it's been very, very successful from that standpoint. So then we said, well, wow, if it can do this, what else can it do? And so I said, my customers can make reservations online. Our reservations are fairly complex because we deal with casino offers and casino players, and have to look up casino offers and look up availability with their offer. So it's fairly complex, but they can do it online. I said, if my customers can do it online, but they choose not to, can I teach a robot to book it for them online? And so we started down that process and got it going. And one of the biggest challenges we had across that was, how do we take a credit card securely over the phone and be able to tie it in? So that took the longest process to do. We found a good partner with PCI Pal, where the call would transfer into PCI Pal. They'd give that number, put the number in over their phone, so to make sure we were all PCI compliant. Come back, process through our payment processor and take the card. So we started that process out. Last year, it booked an average of about 2,500 reservations a month without the need to speak to an agent. The majority of those were casino offers. So it looks up their offer, looks up their availability, books the reservation for them. Booked over about $7 million worth of revenue last year without having to speak to an agent. And I know there's people still want to speak to an agent, right? In fact, if you look at studies, and studies show that like 70% of the people say they'd rather speak to a live agent. But I know 100% of people just want to get their issue taken care of. So how do we do that? How do we help them do that? And really came down to, the process of, digital when you want and human when you need. So I don't think the human element will ever go out of it. There's people who still want to speak to a live agent, but as long as you give them that option. So a lot of the things we learned. I mean, last year from a just a ROI standpoint, I didn't do it out of ROI because I thought it was going to be cheaper than doing an agent. I did it because I needed to answer the phone calls. But when we started putting numbers down on paper, and I looked at what I pay an agent, last year it did 24 FTEs worth of volume. We expanded into our Landry Select Club, our loyalty program. People that didn't get points for their dining, they can now add points through our virtual assistant without the need to speak to somebody. Cut that volume in half. What was going to those people, point balances, things like that. Handles now about 35% of my total volumes. Saved me about 24 FTEs last year.
Brian, you and I talked earlier this week about the idea that we really shouldn't look at this technology as something that is replacing human agents, right? And you had a couple of specific insights in your operation, with the 25% that's always turning over.
Right. So a lot of the benefits. So there's unseen benefits that we didn't see. Like I said, a lot of it, the ROI, you start getting into turnover, attrition. You're all operators or in the contact center business. You know what the cost of training and attrition is. You have 100% annualized attrition, or more is very common in the industry, and you're not turning over 100% of your staff. You're turning over, it's like a bottom 25% of your staff. You're turning over 3 and 4 times. And so what I found with this is now it's replacing this, basically that bottom 25%. And so my attrition, what I found was my attrition dropped in half. So my cost of training and retraining and knowledge my agents that are now still here are they're the more knowledgeable, more tenured agents. They give better customer experience. So when the people do need to speak to somebody, they're speaking to somebody who's highly knowledgeable and very helpful. So it just replaced that churn, a lot of that churn that we turn over and over, and was a big benefit. You figure what the cost of, like I said, it didn't replace 24 people. That's 24 people I couldn't find, I couldn't hire. So it just added and took away those tasks. So we're not replacing people, we're replacing tasks that are very simple, and that's how we started. So we just give people options to be able to, take care of the business and the channel of their choice. And so that was some of the biggest benefits. I don't know what questions anybody has right now. I've just been rambling on, but
All right. Who has a question at this stage?
Well, I threw the question in the chat. I'll throw it out here. The success is awesome, by the way. I'm really impressed with hearing it out. You'd asked the question earlier on about, we tend to struggle with staffing and budgets, and getting some of those things is what I put in budgets in on top of the staffing. But another thing I started thinking about as you were talking is, in our organizations, so I'm a VP of support specifically. When it comes to some of these technical changes and some of the additions that you added with your partners, which again, very impressive and outstanding. I've also seen challenges where it's a little bit harder for me to get the buy-in or the support or focus from different parts of the business. Like I think about our T-Tech departments or different project or even product teams, because in my world right now, I'm not directly tied to the revenue.
right.
And so with that being said, I can come on camera here too. I'm popping in and out because this meeting's right over lunchtime. I don't want to force you guys to see me eating, but I'm kind of curious. Did you get was a lot of the support you were getting in the implementations of these tools and the AI coming from internal, or was it coming from the third parties? Was it a little bit of both? I'm just kind of curious how you navigated some of that journey.
Sure. Sure. Great question. We don't have a lot of internal resources from an IT standpoint. When I think when my CFO saw the impact that was causing us, he ensured that everybody from all lines of business were going to be involved in making this work. So I had some pretty good buy-in from everybody. We didn't have a lot of tech resources. The telephony side of it, we have. I didn't have good VoIP engineers here, so we did source some of that. The network people that we had here, making sure the networks were open. But yes, you have to have good tie-in with your with your IT people, telephony and networking, to be able to get the right. And again, I'm not the IT guy. I'm not the technical guy. I'm the operations guy. But to get the right IPs, to get the right SIPs solutions set up, to ensure, we have properties in Las Vegas and Louisiana and in Mississippi and Atlantic City, and I had to transfer calls back and forth to those properties, and so we had to make sure that, how do we do that over SIP versus over regular long distance phone lines, right, from that cost. So some of that was, some of that technology had to be put in place to be able to make sure we get the calls where they need to go and in the least expensive routing that needed to happen. But yeah, my telephony guys, telecom, tech, we set up regular meetings. The good thing that was for us was my partner knew exactly what to do, right? So they were. That's the difference, I think. If you choose to build it yourself, you got to have the resources to know how to build it. Where my partner, they've done it, right? They could tell us, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this, and then we would get the right solutions in place because they were experts at it and knew how to make it work. So that was a big blessing for us.
Thank you. Adam, can I ask you to weigh in on this as well? Give us some industry perspective on maybe like who's, as a percentage, who's doing this internally? Who's working through partners? What does that look like?
Yeah, but just to add, yes, but to add a little bit to what Brian said, it's hard if you don't have anybody internally that's in the boat with you. If it's just like Chris is going to go and I have this initiative that I want to just go down and there's nobody else that's helping you out, it does become a little bit harder. But to answer the question specifically, these third-party providers provide a lot of support there. And what's great about this, we're talking about AI, but AI is many aspects of the call center. Let's talk about the self-service that Brian talked about. What's great about it is you can prove things out. It's not like buying a core system where a vendor comes to you and says, you need to buy 500 agents today to replace everything. You could choose a use case that you determine. I think that's how Brian did it as well. And so your cost is lower and you can prove it out pretty quickly with data. And then you get the buy-in across your organization from IT to executives and people and things like that. If you try to go in and swallow it all at one time, everyone's like, I'm too busy, or that seems expensive. They're not going to give it a chance. And this is one of the few products that can have an impact on your business, both customers, revenue, and cost. And you can show it on small scale with very, very little risk, right, to your business. And the vendors, like people that Brian used and others, they have a lot of resources there, but at the end of the day, they have to tie into where your calls are coming into. I mean, you could also terminate some of those calls, just redirect them to these providers for these specific use cases. That's one way you do it. But Chris, that's really the key is everybody's busy. IT has their view on things, business has their view on things. You can prove it with a use case. It might be 2% of your calls, but it's very specific for, it's reservations or it's returns or whatever it is, and you prove it out, and then you can get the buy-in. That's what we're seeing most of our clients do is they want to deploy AI, or they come to us saying, I really want to do AI. I'm like, well, first of all, what does AI mean? That's two little letters that mean a lot of things. You zero in on what they're trying to solve, find the low-hanging fruit, get that moving, prove it out, or disprove it. A lot of times our customers end up disproving. It says, this isn't going to give me the return that I need, right? I was expecting this return, I was expecting this kind of containment, but I'm still seeing 80% of the calls go to the agents. You'll prove that it isn't, you're not ready for it, or your use cases aren't ready for it. Every use case is not designed to be self-served.
Yep.
I mean, there's valid reasons why it's going to go to an agent.
Yeah, I love the comment and the feedback there. It's been interesting, right? As I don't know if this is just my industry or my world or that I've been doing. I've had to learn to play a little bit of chess. To that point, we've been able to get buy-in, and we've got a customer-facing chatbot that was created. And I love what Brian said earlier, that we're not replacing people, we're replacing tasks. The way that I was able to get budget and buy-in behind that was that what we did is we reduced our new class, the need for a newer class at the end of the year, right? Which was a bit of a gamble, right? Because if self-service didn't work, it was going to be on me to deal with the pain and some of the challenges. Thankfully, it's worked. One of the things that I'm challenged with right now is not the willingness. People are in the boat with me. They're just using the oar for some other things right now that are more easily tied to revenue. Because I'd love to do more of what Brian has talked about, but also turn it on a little bit more internally facing for my new hire agents, so I can I can speed up their ramp up time, get them to their time to proficiency much quicker. So we're navigating that. So I know it depends on each world that you're in, but I really appreciate the feedback and insights, because I think using the use case is a great example, because if you get the right example in front of the right C-suite, you can get a lot of backing really quick. At least that's been my experience. But I appreciate the feedback from both.
And the time up front to find the right use case. That's the number one thing I tell people, because if you're just trying to deploy this to appease an executive that said, we need to get some AI,
sure,
we need to do stuff, it's going to fail, right? Unless you do your homework, and it takes time, especially on you, like Chris, in your roles. Like, what are the use cases? Which are the ones sorry, Brian, go ahead. I see you're going to say it.
No, I agree. It's that's what we started out with, something we thought was simple. We could get a big bang on it first, and we got 80%. of those calls. And then we've got some use cases where we does 50%, some use cases does about 25%. But those are all options where my agents are freed up. And one of the things with my agents, initially, I pay my agents an incentive for doing upsells when they make reservations. But when they were just taking transfer calls and answering questions, they weren't making any money. So when I pulled those calls off, it was a huge impact and benefit for them. So because now they could focus on making reservations and making more money themselves too. But there's use cases. I've come across I'm helping a company who has millions of calls coming in, an energy company, and identified that roughly 50% of the calls that they were getting are people calling in because they need to get transferred into the billing cycle. And so they were staffing to handle people just to transfer calls in. And we said, hey, we can do this for you. And so now, that's a huge impact. That's almost like I said, almost 50% of the call volume that could be automated. And it was a huge impact for them from staffing. And those are millions and millions of calls a year. So you find the right use case, what it would do, and find something that's going to give you the biggest bang initially, and where you get the biggest return. And then once you start learning those different aspects and what's working well and what's not, tweaking it and saying, hey, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? So it's ultimately, I think you got to look at where's your it's a customer experience. It's all about the customer experience, and where are your customers challenged in doing business with you? How do you make it easier for your customers to do business for you? What are their pain points? And are there solutions out there that will help with those pain points to drive them in the right direction and give them a better experience? That's really what it's all about.
For you, sorry to kind of cut you off there, but like my question is this the first place that you started with any type of AI? Did you start with like a self-service, or like my path that I'm looking at is taking my quality to AI first, and then implementing agent assist inside of my quality, and then moving towards IVA. And so curious to know, did you start here first with this self-service, or did you play around somewhere else first?
No, we started here first. This was the pain point that was costing me a lot, and I needed a resolution for it. But now I'm exploring the other pieces of it. So doing the QA AI training stuff. I know, Chris, like you said, how do you use AI to agent assist and get people up and training better? There's a lot of tools out there from that standpoint. My partner that we started with was just I needed a way, and it's not. I wasn't trying to get rid of calls, right? I know people say, how do you put something in to get rid of calls? A lot of these IVRs are out there to block people from calling in, and so a lot either IVRs, and I wrote a blog on this a while back. Is your IVR a roadblock, or is it a pathway to help your customers get where they want taken care of? So what we did is we gave them, it wasn't the virtual assistant helped somebody take care of their solutions, not tried to route them to somewhere different necessarily. It was how did I find solutions to help them get something taken care of? There's no reason somebody needed to wait on the phone 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes just to get transferred to a different extension. And those were pain points.
I have another question that you're kind of generating in my mind. Before you got started on your kind of self-service way of AI handling scheduling or appointment book. I'm sorry, I work in mental health, so it's appointment booking for me, but hotel booking for you, or reservation booking, whatever it may be. Did you feel like you had, I guess, did you have a robust knowledge management system that AI was learning from? Or did you create that knowledge system specifically for the use case so that the AI could read from that?
So very, very good question. Because we have a knowledge base, and really it was just scripts. Initially, I started off with just scripting, right? My agents had scripts. We had scripts already built. When somebody asked this question, how do you respond to that? And so those scripts were pretty much already built. And so I gave them a bunch of calls, and I said, here's the calls that my for my agents. Here's how my agents are answering these calls, and so they help to kind of build based upon that too. They built the script. Because it's scripted, it's not generative, and so it's not looking out into a database necessarily to find an answer. It's scripted, and I can control what it's saying and how it's responding. However, this was 3 years ago, and three plus years ago, technology has gotten so much better, and the voice has gotten so much better. So we just recently purchased the Golden Nugget, the Hard Rock in Lake Tahoe, when we converted it over to a Golden Nugget. And as we started with this one, I said, hey, how about rather than scripting all this, can we use generative AI? Here's my knowledge base. Here's all my information on Lake Tahoe that I wanted to respond to. And they said, sure. And they gave me some different voices, and the voices they gave me they still sounded robotic, and I wasn't real happy with them. And so I said, I just really like my own voice that we use, and it's live talent. I like that voice. So they were able to go out and clone that voice. And so now we use the clone voice, which sounds, I can tell the difference, but the general person wouldn't be able to tell it wasn't a robot. It was that it's cloned. It sounds just the same. But now I can use that clone voice and use some generative AI to answer a broader range of questions, and I don't have to script it and be restricted. And if I have a change in my resort fees changes, I can just change my resort fees. I don't have to re-record that. So that was one of the challenges with going the direction we did, is anytime I made a change, we had to re-record it. Now we're moving forward more towards the generative AI, but we have knowledge bases set. My knowledge base is OneNote, right? I just have all my information from my agents is in OneNote. You go on OneNote, check OneNote. Well, now that's just my database. That's where they go in and they find the information. And then, of course, we have applications, our reservation system that we have APIs into those, so they can go in and find availability, just much like you would do to your scheduling systems and things like that. But so that's where we were at.
Thank you.
So,
Brian, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you find, because we're on GAI and we've implemented our speed to proficiency for our training. Speed to proficiency was a quick win. It was a pilot, and we were able to get the buy-in from the executives for that. Our ROI was 4 times of the cost of it. So that was easy to go to contractual. But GAI, where we thought was this magical tool that would help us with chat and availability, we found it has a cap. It's not learning. And I just wondered if you found that experience too, like we have to kind of program it, work it with it in the background, use our Salesforce tool. I mean, we've used it for other ways. We found success in other ways for it to give availability options when there's not availability, which helps the agent. And it also, it speeds up the process. We found through our PCI link. So there were some good wins there, reduced handle time by 3 minutes, really good win. But we found that 50% of the time it gives the right answer. And it's set to go on our PDP pages, our project display pages, but so I wondered if you experienced any of that, where it got you there, but it's almost like a ceiling that you can't go above.
I haven't really experienced a lot of that. That's the only property that we've gone to the GenAI piece with so far, and it's only about 3-4 months where we've rolled that out. But I haven't had any challenges with that. We still have a directory that if it need to transfer to, and we still manage a directory which is fairly scripted. But if you call and ask about restaurant hours, of course it's going to look to see whatever our table is in restaurant hours right now. And if we change those hours, then it knows how to read those things. So there's certain things that it's not necessarily learning per se. I mean, you put guardrails on it so it doesn't go off, and it's if it can't find the answer, then it goes to an agent, right? It won't make something up. So we've had to put those guardrails on it.
Those are the things for Gen AI. When Gen AI came out, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're just going to be able to plug Gen AI into any environment. It's going to answer every question accurately."
Nope.
And the reality is, they're calling them hallucinations. Have you guys heard the term hallucinations? Because if you don't contain your data that is relevant to your business model, it will come up with wrong answers most of the time. and say it very confidently, but it's the wrong answer, right? So some of the things that like Brian did, step one was the right thing to do. You do what's kind of just scripted and directed. It's not really AI, but it's scripted and directed experience. So it gives accurate, good experience on data and then Gen AI takes that to the next level where you have this bucket of data that it can look at, and it does learn within your guardrails. The key is making sure it's not seeing other stuff that are not in the context that it's starting to make decisions on, and it's making wrong decisions. So people have had terrible experiences with plugging in Gen AI models that were just built all over. There's some very specific ones that are being built for hospitality. There's other ones that are being built for healthcare, so that you have the more accuracy, and it can learn. And as Brian said, at some point it says, you know what, I think I could hand this over to an agent for you, and I think they're going to be able to answer this better than I can as your bot, and that's perfectly okay too, right? The worst thing you can do is give a wrong answer.
Right.
And AI,
Exactly. We do an agent assist right now where agents looking over the answers, and that's helped even our speed, because we know 50% of the time it's right. But you're absolutely right that we're trying to put the guardrails in so it stays away from issues answers that it does that are incorrect, or hallucinations, as you say.
One of the things as we started building this, we've all had bad experiences with virtual assistants that we just wanted to get out of that loop and get to the right answer, or get to an agent. And so as I build it, initially I said, look, I want to make it easy. I don't want my customers to have to sit and have to say agent, agent, agent. If they say they want to go to an agent, I want to get it to an agent. And that's the way I started it initially. But I think most people have had bad experiences, so they think they need to speak to an agent, where my virtual assistant can do a lot more things than what they think it can do. And so I've actually had to refine it a little bit to say, instead of saying, if they say I want to get to an agent, okay, I'll be happy to get you an agent. Just give me a little more information, what it is you're looking for. And they give them well, I'm just trying to make a reservation. Well, are you a member of our 24 Karat Club? Yes, and you get your number. And by the time they ask enough questions, they realize, hey, the virtual assistant could take care of this stuff, and they didn't need to go to an agent. So there's certain things you learn along the way. And really, again, I'm just trying to make it easier for people to do business with us, and a good experience. But the Gen AI stuff is, I think it's getting better. The technology is getting better. The voice technology is getting so much better than it used to, and so my recommendation, again, I've been doing this for 3.5 years, and we've learned a lot. Not anywhere near where we necessarily need to be, but I would suggest, if you're get into it small, find the small wins, and then say, okay, where do we go from there? So what's next? So that, as Adam mentioned, that's find the use cases that give you a good enough bang, can get some good results. One of the things that's interesting is people think, oh, it's going to cut my handle time. Alicia, you mentioned, reducing your handle time. One of the things I found was, as I'm looking at staffing and forecasting, saying, oh, it's taking all this many calls, but my handle time went up on my agents, right? Because it took away all these short calls. So that's one thing you gotta understand, that when you're looking at staffing overall, your agents are not handling more complex things, and it's taking a little bit longer from what they were used to handling. So you have to, and the staffing on your agent costs are more expensive than your virtual agent. So looking at budgeting and numbers, be smart about how you factor all that stuff in. And
that's very common in a sales organization like yours, where you're selling stuff, because you want the agent to have a long call. The only reason why you want to have a short call in the world that we've all lived in forever is because time is money, and the longer they're on there, it costs us a lot of money. But if you could weed out the bad calls, or do triage on the front end, so that when the call goes to the agent, they already have context, and they don't have to go through the minutia, and they can focus on the sale or the resolution, then you're okay, right? And you look at the cost of the minute or the talk time of the bot combined with the talk time of the human. That's your new cost basis. So it's not about the number of minutes; it's the total cost of your conversation that you had with the client. But Ronette, one question I just want to make sure you answer your question earlier is, we're seeing a lot of people start with like agent assist and analytics and quality. And I call that kind of the back end AI, because they're nervous about doing anything that's going to affect the interaction that the customer has with you. They're worried that there's going to be a poor experience. And so a lot of people are saying, let me just dip my toe into AI. It'll affect my internal people maybe, but it won't, at least won't affect my customer. And the only reason why people are doing that is because they're just afraid and they're not probably having a great plan, like how Brian talked about, pick your use case, do your homework. Most people have got, oh, I'm worried about having a bad experience. I've had bad experience with self-service before, so let's start in the back end. And that's fine too, but because there could be ROIs on both sides of that front end and back end.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's also part of how well structured your back end is or your front end is, right? Like in healthcare, we work in an EHR. Like lots of AIs aren't functioning with EHRs at this point in time, especially some of the not the Epics and Athenas of the world. And so there's a little bit of like what I learned from Brian is like I could start really simple and have some use cases that I could make work that don't necessarily have to tap into my EHR, which would make my lift a lot
The
easier.
more you have to tap into databases, and the more database you tap into for a use case, the worse the experience. The voice, Brian, you may have seen this too. The voice, you may record a voice for the simple directed answers, but then when you have to dip into the different databases, the voice sounds different. So all of a sudden, you have this experience where you're saying, wait a minute, I just heard Ronette's voice and I just heard Adam's voice for this other piece of the answer. And it ends up being a clunky, disjointed experience. So the technology there is really not there yet for the complex ones to be able to have that smooth voice experience through these multiple use cases that had multiple data dips. And so in your vertical in particular, it's hard on some of those. So self-service to me in your vertical is more, I call it the triage, authentication, things like that, that can quickly get somebody to the right person and cut a little bit, but you're probably not going to be able to automate a significant amount of your calls at this point in junction where technology is today.
Yeah. Can I, sorry, Brian, I saw you getting ready to say something. I just want to ask Adam a question there. Because what I'm initially thinking is it's the AI taking in like the demographic information, your name, your address, your insurance, that type of information. And then it switches over to a live agent to schedule because scheduling goes into the EHR, right? So like that's kind of where I'm thinking.
We call that authentication. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so that's a very good point, Renee. So when we said, okay, let's go into full reservations, we realized it was going to take a while to get some of the challenges like the payment information took a long time. I said, but we can do some partial reservations. We started out partial reservations where the virtual assistant said, are you a member of our 24 Karat Club? What's your date of arrival? How many adults? How many nights? And say, thank you, one moment, let me get you over. And then it's already collected that information and it passed that information over, popped it onto the agent screen when I got to the agent. The agent knew, okay, here's the player number. I can pull it up. They're looking for these dates, and it made that experience much quicker, right? And we did see a drop of a minute in handle time on those types of calls initially. So when it did go to an agent, make sure if you're going to capture information from the customer initially, make sure you get that to your agent because you don't want to have them do it all over again. But yeah, it does a lot of things like that. Very good use cases like authentication, verifying. The good thing about this AI is you can't use it. No social engineering to try and get somebody's stuff that passwords and things like that. It's just it's very very straightforward. Like you give me the right answers, and I'm not going to give you any other information. So I think it's much more secure. I'm a huge advocate of what it's done, but that's to your case. Pick up some of that information. Look at your agents and say, are there calls that they get that they have to transfer? Well, why would they have to do transfers? Are there simple questions that get asked? What are those simple questions that get asked? And the thing is, what the other good point is, if you can have it capture all the calls, so it comes in, you start understanding intents, and you understand why is it people are calling, and now you have data to know why they're calling, to be able to break that out, and to be able to now understand more what calls can I move that I'm not currently doing, and which ones do I want to make sure we get to an agent quickly.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and we've heard from everybody except Dan. So Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot and give you an opportunity. I know we're about 10 minutes away from ending this call, so I want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of add their thoughts or add some questions. Where are you guys right now?
Yeah, I don't have any questions for the group. It's all just good conversation. I haven't had the chance yet in my career to introduce AI. I work for the Federal Reserve Bank here in St. Louis, and I work in the Treasury Support Department. And we support 12 to 14 different business lines. So those could be any department of, Veteran Affairs, could be Social Security, could be IRS, could be, again, a dozen different business entities throughout the Treasury for the US government. So we get, obviously a fair share of calls on a daily, monthly, yearly basis. I'm looking forward to AI getting stronger and better and having an opportunity for us to implement that here in this operation. It will be a challenge for us because each business line is different. Each business line has different needs and has different requests. We typically, our support typically revolves around credentialing, access into different systems, access levels, et cetera, based on their position within the company that they work for. So yeah, it would be a big step for us to implement that. It'd be a great cost savings, but a very big laborious step for us to introduce that. But it's something that we'd be excited about.
Thanks. Appreciate that perspective.
Hey, Chris.
Brian?
So Chris, real quick. So we swapped because I grew up in Salt Lake, and so in Utah. So and now I'm in Houston. So yeah, I would love to. We closed down. The last one we had there was Joe's Crab Shack, and closed that one down. It's the last land use project in Utah. But love to have them out there. My family's still out there, so I still get out. And then, yeah, I wish we had more out there.
We miss Houston. I was just off of 45 in Louetta, and I was a much bigger boy when I was in Houston. Just too much good food out that way.
Good. I drive past 45 in Louetta every day on the work.
Love it.
All right. Any other questions? Brian, before I kind of give you the opportunity to kind of close up your section, Adam, is there any overview, anything that you'd like to add at the end of this?
No, listen, I love talk about this all day, so I don't want to belabor it. If anyone wants to talk more, I love talking shop about AI because I think that AI is the most overrated and the most overrated yet has the most opportunity in our market. I think it's just the most overused word right now, but it actually really does have application within the call center, and it is working. The only thing I'd say is you got to do it right. It's not just to throw at it. You have to really put some thought and planning into it. Like Brian said, pick the problem, and Brian had the perfect scenario because he was bleeding money, and so it was probably easier for him to go and say, listen, we got to do something here. And he was able to prove it out very easily. There's not always that low-hanging obvious. So you have to put some real thought into it, find the use case, develop the ROI, and build your support team. Because once it gets going, you can then build on it. Getting the foundation in place, you can really build on it. And we're seeing some really great successes. Stop seeing failures too, right? So again, there's no magic button here where this always works no matter what your vertical is, no matter what your challenge is. So it does take a lot more thought and planning is all I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Brian, help us kind of wrap this up then with learnings, things you think you did right, things you maybe would do differently the next time, and kind of last thoughts for everybody.
Yeah. Well, again, appreciate the opportunity to share. I think it's a very common problem across the board. And I'd love if any of you want direction and help and experience of what we went through. I'd be happy to help you walk through that and get you the right people to help you to manage those processes. But we as we build it initially, I wondered, did I go right by scripting it versus doing more of a generative AI? And I think we did. I think I liked how we started to now understand the technology and now get smarter with it. I don't think I would change. I love my partner, and I think that we've done a lot of great things together, and I'm a huge advocate of them. And just my recommendation is if you think you have a need, let's identify that niche and see what it would take and explore it. Get some demos with some people and say, hey, here's my issue. Here's what I have a problem with. And these are these companies out there, these vendors have been, this is what they do, and they'll help you find the right solutions to do that. And I know Adam has a lot of different vendors that he works with in that space too. But if find the people that are there's a lot of more people that are smarter than I am, and so if I can say, hey, here's my challenge, here's my problems, how do we fix this? They can help you with solutions.
Perfect. First of all, I will tell everybody that this recording we're going to post in our member Slack channel, and there'll also be an area for discussion. So if you want to, post a question that you didn't think about during this 60 minutes, we'll have an opportunity for people to respond to that. Also, the Slack channel is just a great way to connect with each other. Brian and I have talked about this, but getting people connected at this level in this industry is just hugely valuable. And I think that's, part of the reason you guys are here today. And then I just want to say thank yous. I want to say thank you, Brian, for sharing your story. I think it's hugely important for us to hear the success stories, to know that it is possible, it can work. We should we should get started because this is a direction I think that's going to be valuable for everybody, in one way or another. I think this is the future. And to be able to hear from people who are actually been there, done that, I think is hugely valuable. I want to thank Adam for his perspective and, being able to share real application of, what's working, what's not, what are your customers saying, where are they at? Adam's a great resource, and the Slack channel is a super place to get connected with him. And I want to thank all the people who participated today. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for your perspectives. Thank you again. Hope the rest of your week goes really well, and appreciate everybody being part of this event today.